Hello, I'm Richard Forsyth, and I'm here today to talk about Globalscape's DMZ Gateway. First, we're going to talk about what is the DMZ Gateway, and then we'll talk about why we should use the DMZ Gateway in conjunction with our EFT server. And we'll talk about how it does what it does, and then we'll go through installation of the DMZ Gateway and configuring your EFT server to communicate with the DMZ Gateway. So we'll start with what is the DMZ Gateway? Well, the DMZ Gateway is basically a reverse proxy server, and it sits in front of the customer firewall in what is often referred to as the demilitarized zone. The DMZ Gateway is used in combination with EFT to create a multi-tier security solution for data storage and retrieval. The DMZ Gateway resides in the demilitarized zone to provide secure communication with EFT behind intranet firewalls and without requiring any inbound firewall holes between the internal network and the DMZ, and with no sensitive data stored in the DMZ even temporarily. So the DMZ Gateway allows for the separation of network zones. And by residing in the demilitarized zone, or the DMZ, it keeps sensitive data and operations safely within the internal network on the EFT server while enabling external access from users on the internet. The DMZ Gateway ensures that no sensitive data is stored in the DMZ ever, and this limits the attack surface and helps protect the internal network from potential threats. The DMZ Gateway provides access control by cross-referencing client IP addresses against an access list provided by the EFT server. And this determines which connections can proceed and which will be denied, thus enhancing your access control. And how does it do this? Well, step one, when the EFT service is started, it will establish and maintain an outbound connection to the DMZ Gateway. This proprietary non-encrypted connection is called the Peer Notification Channel, or the PNC. Now, the PNC can be encrypted using SSL encryption, but it's not necessary due to the fact that EFT is already behind the firewall and it only requires an outbound port for this connection. So EFT and the DMZ Gateway use the PNC to set up any subsequent communications between EFT and incoming client connections at the DMZ Gateway. Step two in this process, when a client connects to the DMZ Gateway from the internet on a pre-approved port, such as port 22 for SFTP connections, the DMZ Gateway will cross-reference the client's source IP address with the IP access list provided by the EFT server through the PNC channel before proceeding any further. Then step three, if the IP is accepted, the DMZ Gateway will notify EFT over the PNC of the new client connection, providing information such as the client's IP address and the port to which they are connected. Then step four, EFT will subsequently create a new outbound connection to the DMZ Gateway to the same port that is being used by the PNC. So and this will be associated with the client connection. Then step five, the DMZ Gateway will then proceed to re-encapsulate the inbound payload data from the client and forward it to the EFT server on the correct port for processing. So the gateway will also forward outbound data communication from EFT and send it to the client. All of your SSH and SSL terminations will take place at the EFT server safely behind the firewall, and this ensures that all the data is encrypted end to end and is secure until it is safely behind the firewall. So now, how do we enable and configure the DMZ Gateway? Well, the DMZ Gateway system requirements and the installation instructions for this are located on our website at globalscape.com, and you can download the installer there. And when you run the installer, there are only a couple of options to put into it as to where to install the application and where to store the DMZ Gateway configuration information. After the installation portion is completed, you'll then be asked to create a profile. This is where you will enter the IP address and the port of your EFT server and the port number that EFT will use to communicate to the DMZ via the PNC. So after this profile is completed, you can move your EFT server and configure it on that end. So let's move over to our EFT server now. The DMZ Gateway is a site level connection, so we can choose which site we want to set up to connect to our EFT or our DMZ Gateway, that is. And we expand our site and we can see the gateway sections and settings here. So in our DMZ Gateway tab, we just check the box at the top to enable our DMZ Gateway connection, and then enter the IP address and the port number we're going to use to communicate via the PNC channel to the DMZ Gateway. Now, port 44500 is what we put in here by default. We do suggest as a best practice that you change that. Below it here is the box you can check to encrypt and secure the PNC channel if you wish to do so. And down below it here are the different protocols that we can enable to work through the DMZ Gateway as well. Once we have these set and configured, we simply hit the apply button at the bottom and our DMZ Gateway is now active and working. That concludes our video for today. If you're interested in Globalscape and our managed file transfer technology, please reach out to us via email or our website. Again, my name is Richard Forsyth and thank you for watching.